And the weight cutting for the competitions is over for the year. I thought I might actually do a quick video to cover what I've actually learned from all those times I've cut down for a competition and how I've actually made it easier. Every year I've jumped on stage, I've gotten leaner, and the process has become easier. Doesn't mean the process is easy, it's just not as much of a struggle the first time I tried it. So key things I've actually found to make things easier. First up is an average energy intake over the week. Some rules I put across the board for my dieting and how I improve my dieting every time I come into the process. So the big one is flexible daily energy intake. Because every day is not the same, trying to hit the same amount of calorie deficit every day when you're trying to lose weight can be a challenge. I find personally I've got a couple of days throughout the week where I find it quite easy to diet, and other days, especially in the weekend when the fridge is easily accessible, trying to maintain the same type of diet in that situation is not as easy. So what I look at is the average intake over the whole week. So typically what I'll do, I'll take 2 days of the week where I'll pull back by about 1,000 calories on those 2 days. The other 3 days of the week, I'll pull back by about 200 calories, creating a decent deficit over the entire week. And then in the weekend, I'll average calorie intake out over the entire time. I'll cover that in a second. But the structure of the week, I'll pick days that are easier to diet on, and I find leveraging a busy day can be quite beneficial. So, for example, on Tuesday and Thursday, in the gym, running classes, almost non-stop for the whole day. So trying to find time to eat can be a challenge. So I'll leverage that fact, pull back on food intake on those days. Because I'm so busy, I get distracted and then get to the end of the day and realize I've actually dieted quite nicely without actually trying too hard. And the other days where I'm not as busy, I'll allow myself having a higher food intake, and it almost feels like I have mini diet breaks all throughout the week and I only have to diet twice a week, which is actually a cool concept in itself. Then when I come to the weekend, I'll look at the average intake over the full weekend. So for that, if for example, your maintenance calorie intake is 2,200 calories a day, over the weekend, you pull it back to 2,000, but have 4,000 calories for Saturday and Sunday. What you can then do is pick times throughout the weekend where you have more food intake, like for example, Saturday evening, when I sit down, relax in front of a movie, have a few nibbles, have the bulk of your calorie intake around that time, not all of it by any means, then starve yourself for the rest of the weekend. But you pull back on the other meals around the day. So like for example, breakfast won't just be a protein shake. Lunch could be something like chicken breasts and vegetables. You do that on Saturday and Sunday. You have a lot of additional calories to spend however you want in the evening. As long as your protein goals are met, I keep the weekends quite free and easy. What that allows me to do is then look at the entire week and look at the average calorie deficit that I've created over the entire week. Each day is a bit different based on what the day's like, and the average though over the whole week puts me enough of a deficit to keep the weight loss going. Now, this doesn't promote rapid weight loss. This promotes sustainable weight loss that you can leverage over a long period of time. For rapid weight loss, those low energy days is just for every day of the week, which is basically what you have to do right before competition. But however, that's a whole other story and that is just hell. But for the bulk of it, look at the average intake over the week. And a few days where you push it harder that you find it easier to do so, and other days where it's still in deficit but not quite as intense, make things quite nice. The next one, which actually almost coincides with controlling the energy intake, is one of the rules I establish, is healthy eating Monday through to Friday. The weekend is more about just hitting my protein goals. So during the week, my main goal is to get the nutrients into the body, focusing on whole foods like meat and veggies for most of my meals. And then the weekend, we're getting the protein in and having a bit of fun on the Saturday or maybe on Sunday evening as well. That unto itself helps pull back the energy intake over the whole week. And the biggest thing there is focusing on just healthy whole foods and understanding the energy content of those whole foods. The next aspect which coincides with those healthy foods is how I've made my diet easier every single year. What I do, every time I go into a weight cutting phase, I'll play around with different healthy meals that are low in energy intake, but still quite healthy, like my classic go-to, very boring, frozen mixed veggies, chicken breast, and herb and garlic salt. Very plain, very simple, but I quite enjoy it. When I found out how nice that meal was, I keep that healthy meal in my diet regardless if I'm in a weight cut phase or a bulking phase. So I established that healthy meal that I found during my weight cut, as a standard go-to meal. What that achieves, when I'm moving from a bulk or maintenance phase into a cut, a lot of the meals I'm already eating, I don't have to change. One thing I have found, especially after the first cut I did, which I tried some very gnarly stuff with, it was too much of a change. Like, I went into ketogenic dieting, intermittent fasting of up to 20 hours with 4-hour eating windows and repeated that, and a lot of other things that was just too much of a change from my standard diet. In the preceding years, one thing I did, when I found healthy meals I quite enjoyed during my cut, and did involve a bit of experimentation, I kept them in. When I moved out of that maintenance phase into a weight cut, there's very minimal changes. So one thing I had to do with the going from a weight cut to a bulk is add in additional things to those meals that I already quite enjoyed. As an example, I really quite enjoy having oats for breakfast. However, when I went into a bulking phase, all of a sudden I had to almost double the amount of oats from half a cup to a full cup, then add in some toast into the mix as well, just to bring my energy intake up to put on a bit of weight. When I then moved into a cut, all I had to do was cut out the toast, half the oats, and it created a quite decent energy deficit just by doing that one little wee change. I'll still have my oats in the morning for breakfast, which I quite enjoyed, but that other change pulled the energy back enough to eat into itself to promote weight loss. One thing you do to make every diet you go into easier is use each one as an experimentation, especially with the foods that you're consuming. One thing I found very beneficial as well with the go-to meals was my go-to treats. Now, when you're in a weight cut, you just want to find any excuse to have a bit of a treat. Use that as a chance to experiment with different treats that aren't high in energy intake. So a few of the examples I actually use myself, I switched out potato chips for corn thins. They still taste quite nice, but the energy intake was pulled back quite considerably. When I move into my bulking phase, I kept that as one of my go-to treats. So when the weekend comes around and I'm trying to cut weight, you want to have a treat, but you don't want to blow your energy intake out and start putting on weight again. You've already established go-to treats that we have to do is control the amount you're having, but you still get to have those treats. You feel like you've had a reward on the weekend, and you still manage to lose weight despite having what's classified as a cheat weekend. But it takes experimentation. So every time that I come to a diet, I experiment with different things, mainly to see if they taste nice. Quite often, do a few experiments, they taste like crap and you don't repeat it. But when you find things you quite enjoy and you establish a base routine of your go-to meals that are quite healthy and low in energy, go-to treats that are lower energy density, it makes maintaining weight and losing weight so much easier. So to sum things up, the things I found making the entire weight cutting process easier was allowing me to have flexibility with my daily energy intake. Dieting harder on days that are easier to diet on, then pulling back on other days that were a bit more of a challenge. Each time I come into the diet, experimenting with different meals, establishing healthy go-to meals and lower energy treats that I can keep in my diet whether I'm trying to lose weight or gain it. So those couple of things there, they're not anything flash, but they do make some good fundamentals to start building your diet on. And with dieting, you've got to do a diet that works for you. As long as you can create a weekly energy deficit, that unto itself will create the weight loss. Getting that weight off is incredible for the health benefits, and of course, if you wanted to get on stage or just look good for summer, it makes a huge difference.